Hello, everybody. Thank you for joining us today. My name is Alan Perez, your host for the Meet the Agent podcast. And today I'm being joined by Helen Hitchcock, expert real estate agent with over 14 years of experience servicing the Pacific Northwest, specifically the Seattle metropolitan area. Today, Helen is going to be sharing with us her background, how she got into real estate to begin with, as well as sharing some takeaways and lessons that ideally everybody that's watching this episode today can apply to further their own business. With that being said, Helen, thank you so much for joining us. How are you doing today?
I'm doing great, thank you. And I'm really happy to be here.
Fantastic. We're super excited to have you here. Thank you for setting aside that time for us to connect. Now, I'm very excited to be able to share your perspective and the life lessons that you've learned, Helen, because, I mean, in my estimation, right, like we've already talked about before, growing up wasn't necessarily the easiest thing. Could you give us some insight into the, kind of the mix or how things were for you and how you had to develop your own self-leadership style?
Oh, okay. Yes, I grew up in a family of boys. I'm the only girl. It was a real boy-oriented family. My mom was real boy-oriented, obviously my dad. And so I learned to play ball, boy style, and and try to, beat them all at their own games. So, my dad. My dad came from an immigrant family, and immigrant families were the hardest. Really, they knew to achieve the American dream, it was all about education and work. And so that was what, we all had to have a good education. We all had to work really hard. And so those kind of have stayed with me my entire life, those lessons.
Amazing. And I mean, one of the great stories that I'd love for you to be able to jump into for us as well is how you've been able to take that approach, beat them at their own game and kind of from the outside looking in, realizing, hey, I not only have the ability to do what they're doing, but do it better than what they're doing. Could you kind of share how that process was for you going into your adulthood and your career choices that you'd made?
Well, my career choices, I set out originally, I was going to be a teacher, and I did that for a year, but I couldn't make enough. I was having children, and I couldn't make enough money to support my family. So I looked around and I thought, well, what are the boys doing? And they all were going to graduate school and getting MBAs. So I lived near Berkeley at the time. And so I went to Berkeley and got my MBA in finance, and I started a career in banking. And I really didn't understand quite that there was this thing called a glass ceiling. And this was, in 1972, and there was really a glass ceiling because I'd grown up thinking I could do whatever I wanted to do if I just tried hard enough and persevered long enough. And so I just outworked everybody. And I became the go-to person. I had a computer background and programming and background from graduate school. And so I just became the go-to person that they couldn't get rid of. So that's what I did. And then, I had a great career in banking, and banking was hugely fun. And then it became not so fun. And I retired, and I looked around and I thought, I'm too young. I needed something more to do. So I had always been interested in real estate. I took real estate courses in graduate school and wrote lots of papers on, housing for in third world countries, housing that would withstand, 200-mile-an-hour winds and in the Majuro Islands. I mean, weird stuff. But I always, some people wanted to feed the world, and I always wanted to house the world. So I went into residential real estate and love it.
Amazing. And I mean, yeah. And I mean, thank you so much for giving the extensive background that you did share. Something that I have found kind of common a trend with the all-star agents that we do speak to, such as yourself, is having that background in education for whatever reason. And maybe I'll kind of share my thoughts on it, but it does seem like having that emphasis on being able to teach, being able to share information is something that definitely prepares a lot of real estate agents. Um, could you share, I guess, a little bit in your mind what the biggest takeaways that you were able to bring to real estate from your teaching career are, if any come to mind?
Yeah, well, I've always, I have 5 children and they're all adults, and I have 9 grandchildren. And I've always, taken my life lessons from my dad about hard work and education. And, I was always teaching them lessons at home in order to augment what was going on at school. But the way I can use that now, since everybody's, grown up, is I become a mentor at work. I have an agent, a young agent at work that I am mentoring to get her started. And that's been working out really, really well. But I also mentor my clients because I do have a lot of first time home buyers. We have a huge tech industry in the Seattle and East Side area, and we have a huge med tech. And so you get a lot of people from foreign countries who are, they work extremely hard, they save their money, and they want the American dream of a house. And so I work with them a lot in bringing that to fruition. And it's been really rewarding.
And it's remarkable that you, I mean, again, the way that certain people, and I would say that you're definitely very much, in my mind, an altruist, someone that wants to make the world better. And it sounds like kind of in the same vein of, kind of helping other people the way that your family had needed that help also when you had first started out, which is, I mean, that's always so admirable to want to make things better for other people, to say, I want to, with the experience that I've had here, be able to pay it forward so that other people, they can stand on my shoulders and not have to find and struggle over those same lessons. On the topic of mentoring other agents, now I really like this topic, and I don't think that we've done it justice previously. When would you say, and again, this is maybe just kind of a random question, but I'll build on it. When do you think the right time for any agent would be to start to pick up younger agents to mentor, to train, to kind of set the example for? Or would you say that maybe it's just kind of a decision to make, kind of a personality type that may or may not do so?
Yeah, I think it's individual to the veteran agent, to tell you the truth. It has to be in your heart. You have to be willing to give of your time and not necessarily get paid. And that's hard when, agents are really looking for that commission. But I find it rewarding because the woman that I'm mentoring right now is from China. And she actually owned a real estate agency in Beijing, but she's here now, and her daughter is in school, and she's here for the long term. And she just needs to know how it's done in America. So she's taken the test. She did well. She's got her license, and but English is a second language, and that's always hard. A lot of people, when we're born here, it's like, yeah, it's such an easy language. Well, it's not. Not if you weren't born here. And so we work a lot on contacting and her language skills and what to say and scripts. And she's very good technology wise. But it takes about 2.5 hours a week of my time. And, the program at the company that I'm with is usually a 3-month program, but she has asked if I could keep on with her because her language skills are developing. And I've agreed to do that. It's just because I like her and I want her to succeed.
Yeah, I mean, it's something that we see with the because we do talk to real estate agents here on the mind or Meet the Agent podcast, and then also we have our kind of our sister podcast, the Mindset. Similar topics, but it is also it's so refreshing to get that that sentiment being shared, right? I would like to help other people grow. I mean, I think ultimately it's one of the calling cards of wanting to go into real estate to begin with. Now, everybody knows that there can be a lot of money to be made in real estate, but there's a lot more relationships, a lot more kind of fulfillment that you can get in that way of getting to know these people, getting to know their station in life, getting to see how you can help them move forward. Something else, and again, the primary reason for the question to begin with, right? Why mentoring, or why should mentoring be a focus? Like you just mentioned, it makes you kind of sharpen your own game at the same time, right? It gives you the ability to take pause and think about, well, when I think about cold calling, how do I do cold calling? If I'm going to tell this person how they should do cold calling, I should probably tell them the best way to do it. And so I really like that. I mean, would you say that that has a hand in why you're able to do well as a real estate agent? Because you think not just how you're able to do things, but how somebody, again, from the outside looking in, or somebody that's maybe newer, should be approaching these tasks as well?
I do. I think it's very rewarding and it enriches. I mean, I get as much from it as she does, to tell you the truth. And my office manager is very appreciative that I've done this. I mean, I get a candy bar every once in a while, but it's I get as much as she does, probably more, because you don't really know a topic until you teach a topic, and sometimes I mean, especially when we have forms changes, and it's easy to like, oh yeah, another forms change. I'll figure it out when I have to. Well, when I have to teach her the forms change, that means I understand it as well, and I can, I become like somebody that people can go to ask questions about those things. So it makes me a resource in my office, and we have a lot of younger agents, so there's no end to questions.
Yeah. Actually, on that note, because again, we do in internet lead generation and just in the real estate industry in general, right? It is commonly known that there is always that new set of agents, right, kind of working their way through, trying to get their legs under them. With the sets of new agents that you see entering your office, do you identify any kind of common mistakes, or maybe any aversions that newer generations might have to things like cold calling or door knocking, or even just being diligent with their follow up? What mistakes would you say that you've been able to observe from newer generations when you are kind of mentoring them along in that aspect?
I think cold calling is always a problem, and you just have to say, hey, I'm going to do it. I'm going to dial, I'm going to smile. And what's the worst thing they can do? Hang up on you? I mean, they can't take away your birthday, right? So it's like there's nothing that's going to happen to you. They probably won't even remember your name. But when you hit someone and you have an actual conversation, and you say, like, I don't know, I was just watching a seminar or a broadcast that Daman and Pat or Daniel did, and on best practices, and it was really good. And they emphasized, you just gotta, if you get a bad one, you just mark it archived and move on to the next one. And Daniel made the point, which I think is excellent, that if you've got your automation in place, if you've got your technology dialed in, there's almost no end to how many leads you can take. I guess probably the number of leads that you can grab, are limited by your allocation and by how many are in your market. But you just got to work those leads, and I think that's a problem that a lot of people have. They're just too reticent, and I had it. There was no question. I had it, and I had to just kind of get over myself.
Yeah, I mean that's a perfect way to put it, honestly, right? Get over yourself in terms of, how is this going to negatively impact you? Now, it's not necessarily fun to get those negative conversations. But at the same time, it's something that is so vital because, like you just mentioned, right, you can mark them off and move on. I think that a lot of agents will take the approach of, I have to find the needle in the haystack, right? And the sooner that I can get rid of or discard this lead, the sooner that I'm going to get to that next lead that will say yes. A lot of the time, it's not necessarily like that, though, right? The leads that you discard, those could be the leads that if you email market to for 3 months, maybe will be your transaction next June, right? And I think that that's maybe also the disconnect, right? Is that it's not what's the flash in the pan, which prospect will say yes right away and sign on the dotted line, but which of these prospects can I get a hold of so that I can either, move them forward or disqualify them. I mean, I don't think that it's bad to disqualify leads, but actually on that topic, Helen, do you have any specific indicators, right? Because there will be different agents that have different feelings for different objections, right? Or different blockers, I guess you could call them, right? Like if they don't have their credit in line or if they haven't talked to a lender just yet. But I feel like that is kind of irresponsible on the agent side as well to let this person kind of float without mentorship. If you're able to take the mentor role and understand, okay, well, this is what they need to complete, you can hold their hand along and get them to that point. But what would you say is something that is kind of immovable, Helen? Are there any aspects that make you say, oh, I just need to call this one off, disqualify this lead, and move on to the next?
Well, a good example of an immovable one is I called and it had been, I asked for the person who'd called me, which was a woman, and it turned out it was this guy's wife. And I asked when she was going to be home from work, and he gave me a time, and then he wanted to know what this was about. So I thought, well, he said he was her husband. So I engaged with him, and he got really angry and called me a liar and said, my wife would never, ever go on a site and check the value of our house with the intention of selling. We're not selling our house and we're not blah, 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 blah. And I thought, uh-oh, they're going to have a conversation when they get home, when she gets home from work. So I would say that I thought, yeah, I don't want to be in the middle of this. So I archived it and moved on.
Yeah.
But a lot of people don't have their lender in place because a lot of people are at the very beginning of their process. Mm-hmm. And you have to figure out where they are, in time and space. And so I've got one woman who's actively working with a lender that I usually give 4 lender names if they don't know them so they can choose one. And I said, these are lenders that my clients have used in the past and had good success with, so pick one. Well, she's actively working, and I've given lender names out to 2 or 3 others. And so I got to check back with them and how they're doing. Did they contact anyone? Do they want more names? That kind of thing. But if you can figure out where they are in the process, you can figure out how you can fit yourself into that and add value.
Definitely. Because again, sometimes it's just a matter of being able to kind of cast light and let them know, well, this is the path. This is with these different, it's almost like putting an equation together, I guess you could say, right? It's, these different things have to be in place. And so these different variables need to be addressed. So you need to talk to these different professionals and we'll get you there. Something that I've heard that comes to mind here, I've heard that the best real estate agents are the ones that can act as a connector, as kind of a hub, a central person to go to that can get any question answered or get any specific service that's being requested addressed, right? Would you consider yourself a connector, Helen?
I do, and I've always sort of been like that. And I learned that in my banking days because we had to cross-sell other bank products. So I was always connecting, people with other departments in the banks to buy other products. Well, it's the same thing. Here, if you need a lender, let me give you 3 or 4 names. And if you don't like any of those people, let me give you 3 or 4 more. And in my repeat business, and I have, quite a bit of that, they come back like 2 years later after they've bought their house, and they ask me for things like, do you know anybody that's a good floor finisher for the hardwood floors. I need a plumber. I need, I want to remodel the bathroom. Do you know anybody? So, I try my best to hook them up with different names of service providers.
How usually do you get that list together? Because I would say that, the process of knowing which professional that you can recommend a prospect to, right? Recommend to complete a project. If you have the right kind of list, if you have the right kind of partnered professionals, then it can be extremely valuable, right? Invaluable to get there. What do you need to see in a vendor or in a professional, right? A contractor, a stager, whoever it may be, what specific kind of green flags do you look for to say, okay, this person needs to be on my list. I need to make sure that when I'm recommending someone for flooring, that it's this person.
So basically, it's other people's experience with that particular provider. The office that I'm in is it's a very collaborative group of people, and there's emails, probably 3-4 times a week. Hey, does anybody know a good roofer? Do you have anybody that's had experience with a good roofer? Let me know. And so what we do in our office is the receptionist actually keeps lists of these providers and who's used them. So you can always go back to the agent and say, hey, what did your client do? Were they really, really happy? Or, were there any hiccups? And so you kind of vet these people through other people's experience, and you just kind of keep the good ones.
Yeah, I mean, it's amazing because it's really just maximizing. Because I'm sure, well, I guess I would suppose that a lot of different brokerages probably have that same kind of structure in place. I mean, usually there will be someone that you can kind of recommend, but for you to put your ear to the ground and then also then follow up with that agent and say, well, how was that process, right? Because sometimes things can be skewed, perceptions can be miscommunicated, and I mean, I'm sure that we've all seen it, right? But no, that makes a lot of sense. Now, I mean, switching gears here, right? We've talked about a couple of different suggestions, recommendations, kind of the most important parts of being able to be successful as an agent. What would you say are kind of fundamental building blocks that new agents should be paying attention to? Again, like we just mentioned, right? Cold calling, developing your ability to kind of cold approach. What other aspects or kind of skills would you say that new agents should make sure to focus on and train?
Building your database. That is super, super important. And we have, in our company, we have different drip campaigns, many, many drip campaigns. And we can get these keyed up and sent out automatically to buyers, sellers, people who are just, interested in the market. I mean, general market information. We have a monthly newsletter that goes out with all these different neighborhoods and, listings, pending sales. We have a whole bunch of economic data that we can send out. And so you've got to keep your name and your face in front of people because, they forget. And if you don't get a hold of someone, in a year, you may find that they've listed with somebody else because you're not top of mind. And so I always preach database building and database management and sending out different useful kind of tips and tricks for the homeowners and not only the sellers and how to get your house market ready, but the buyers, how to be buyer ready in this crazy market. So that I think is a big one. And then from just a technical side, know every word of every document. Make sure that you can explain it to people, because the worst feeling is you've got a new couple in front of you and you've got documents and they ask you what something means and you can't come up with it. That shoots your credibility in the foot right there. So, not only the outreach, but, the technical building blocks as well.
Mm-hmm. Definitely. No, it's incredibly important. And Something else that I'd love to have you elaborate actually on now is you mentioned that you have a lot of success with that repeat business. And I think that it's just another one of those factors, kind of like with cold calling and lead working, right? It's another one of those factors where agents can leave money on the table. In my understanding, and I was looking for the statistic before, I just couldn't find it, but in my understanding, less than 50% of agents, or rather, less than 50% of shoppers, people who have either bought or sold a property, less than 50% of them will use the same agent that they used for their initial transaction. Does that sound right? Why is that? I mean, could you elaborate on that?
So everyone's busy, lives are full. You were really important to them at one point, and then you went away and they moved on. So your task and your challenge is to make sure that they remember you and remember the good experience that they had with you. And so that means communication. You got to do emails, you got to do texts, you got to do pop buys with, I don't know, primroses on Mother's Day. Hey, you know what? I thought of you. This was on sale. It's not a big thing, but I thought of you and how great you were with your kids during the closing process. And so, you just got to keep finding ways to engage with them.
Definitely. I mean, again, like you mentioned, it's that being top of mind. You really do want to form that association, right? That when somebody thinks real estate, that they think Helen Hitchcock because of the way that I can ask her any question that comes to mind and she doesn't belittle me or make me feel like I should already know this. She takes the time to explain it to me. Do you have any specific recommendations or thoughts on gifts? Because, like you mentioned, right, and pop buys or different ways that you can kind of maintain that relationship longer term. Obviously, are fantastic, and it's what every real estate agent should be doing. But do you have anything like like the magnet sticky calendar that people put onto their fridges, or any kind of branded materials that you might leave your recent clients with? Do you have anything like that?
There are a lot of things that we source, and our marketing people in the office keep a supply of, with our company name on it. As far as specific branding, I mean, there's always the pens and the pads of paper and the Mariner schedule on a magnet on your refrigerator, and the Seahawks schedule, and or whatever your local teams are. And people love that stuff. They really do. And then on my A clients, I have my databases is delineated A, B, and C, and hotness to coolness. And so on my A clients, I do a little bit more, some really nice handcrafted chocolates at Christmas, a small plant or bouquet at Mother's Day, that kind of thing. And it's not just a one-way street. I have a client that I think I've done 3 transactions with her and her husband, and they're coming up as the market is changing. They need a bigger place, and so maybe this year they'll move again. But she knits me scarves. She's a knitter, and so she's a fabulous knitter, and so it's not a one-way street. I get stuff too. So
Yeah, and I think it really does boil down to, like you mentioned, right? And real estate it's a business of relationships, of being able to cultivate and have an understanding with somebody, show them that you do care about them. And I mean, like you're mentioning now, it's how do people show that they care about other people, and how do you make sure that your client is able to kind of understand that, right? By just checking in with them, by telling them, even just sending them, text messages. I mean, again, it's not necessarily just a transaction, right? It's not just a one and done, or here next time that you need a house, call me again, right? But like you mentioned, you have more of an emphasis on being a community leader, like you mentioned with the Seahawks game calendar. That's something that I haven't heard up until this point, and that again, it's amazing because you really do tie the community aspect to what it is that you're providing. I mean, do you have any other tips or tricks like that you do to not sell just your services, but also kind of the connection to the community that they have available to them?
Well, I'm always looking for new restaurants or shops or bookstores. And when I run across something, whether it's, on this island or in a neighborhood in Seattle or Bellevue, and I will, and it's appropriate for someone that I know on my client base, I'll just pop them a text and say, hey, I ran across this brand new independent bookstore. I know how you love independent bookstores. Come and try this one out. They've got this, they've got that. So, I always try, or new restaurants in Seattle. I mean, they're always popping up and, that kind of thing, especially now, where, our state thankfully is pretty low on COVID. We're getting a lot of new restaurants popping up. And so I'm always, just trying to connect people with what I know their interests are, just so that I can be part of the mix.
Yeah, and again, it's that aspect of just having a genuine interest, which is again, it's amazing. Um, Something that you mentioned that I do want to have you elaborate on. Well, actually, I guess just kind of as a general statement. Back in, I think it was the last week of April, if not the first week of May, right? It was announced that the United States is no longer in the pandemic phase of COVID-19, right? How has that, or actually, I guess just in general, with the changes and with the adjustments that have been made recently, right? That coupled with also mortgage rates and just the competitive aspect of the market, could you give us a little bit of insight into how things are going specifically in your market, with just how long homes will be up for sale, how many offers they're getting, things along those lines?
Well, yeah. So in King County, Washington, the median priced home in the county is $1 million. So it's a very rarefied market. And homes are flying off the market between 1 and 5 days. And there's a lot of pent up cash. There's a lot of cash buyers. And in fact, I had just shown this one particular house on the water on Mercer Island. Mercer Island is an island in the middle of Lake Washington. So one bridge you go to Seattle, another bridge you go to Bellevue and the East Side communities. And it was over 6 million. And I just showed it 2 nights ago. The first night it was on, and today it's pending. Not pending inspection, but just pending. So which means 2 days, they probably got full price, all cash, over 6 million. So it's a crazy, crazy market. And it's really hard for first-time home buyers who aren't in that sort of rarefied atmosphere. And it takes a lot more to help them find a place. It takes them a lot more to get market to be ready to make a decision and make an offer. Our lenders are really good about fully underwriting, not just a pre-approval letter, but fully underwriting somebody's file so that the last thing they need to complete the deal is if it's a finance deal, a bank appraisal. And so we go the extra mile to get everybody to as near to cash as we can get them, even though they're getting financing. So yeah, it's different here.
Yeah, no, actually, on that, because like you mentioned, you are in one of the still tech hubs of the U.S. Do you foresee there being an answer to this kind of, well, again, something that we have here also in California that we've seen just everywhere, right? Is that lack of inventory. And there has been, minor buzzing of different modular concepts to be able to, take a standard, 4-bed, 3-bath and turn it into, a pod type of like a compound almost, right? Something along those lines. What's the word? Like hostel style living. I mean, do you foresee a tech trend helping overcome this inventory issue, or how do you think that this will get resolved, if not through tech?
Well, if you look at the national statistics, we as a country are short about 4 million housing units right now, and builders can't build that fast. And especially since talk of, the interest rate rise, trying to dampen down inflation, and the talk of like things are starting to change. Like I've even seen some price reductions, which have for the last 2.5 years in this area have been absolutely unheard of. And so, builders are kind of pulling in their horns too. But for a long time, because we're a big college town, and we have all these tech workers coming in from all over the world, we have, apartments that are called podments that are just, like the old rooming house style thing where everyone shared a kitchen and, bathroom down the hall kind of deal. But yeah, it's really difficult, and we don't have enough rental units. We don't have enough inventory of any type of housing to buy. So it's a very difficult, but I'm starting to see, like for instance, I checked on this island, for instance, there's 2,700 homes and there's 17 on the market. And that's all styles: condo, townhouse, single family. And it's like that's the most we've had on the market at any one time in the last 2.5 years. Oftentimes I'll pull up the MLS and we'll have one listing. And so there's no choices, and there's no place to rent. So I'm now starting to see that change, not particularly here so much, but in Seattle and on the east side.
Interesting. Yeah, I mean, as things continue to, I guess it is also maybe even just a migration of the tech capitals, right? I mean, as we continue to hear about how Texas is growing and more different companies do go out and look for that kind of frontier where the I guess the what would you say that the price of living, right, is also kind of balanced with the being in the right place to be, so to speak.
Well, with so many people in the tech industry working from home for the last 2.5 years, the companies are having a hard time getting them to come back to the office, and they've kind of given up because, if someone doesn't want to come back to the office and likes the comfort of their home office, they have 2 or 3 other offers in their hand. They can just go wherever they want because we don't have enough tech workers either. We need a lot more people in this area. But people have moved out of town into different counties. And so other counties around King County are feeling just a huge boom too. And so, it's going to be hard to get somebody who's moved to another island, say in the San Juans, who's working from home to actually think, I guess I want to go on a ferry and then drive on a freeway to go to the office. It's not. So it's kind of interesting because people are just really having the freedom to move wherever they want.
Yeah, it makes a lot of sense. And at the same time, I mean, it has been that the Great Resignation, right, is something that's been coined, the term, and even for kind of the bigger companies, something that I'd seen recently is that even Apple was in headlines recently because somebody in their management team they are huge and sprawling, right? But somebody was so opposed to returning to office that, like you just mentioned, they decided that they would go seek greener pastures. So it definitely is an interesting and exciting time. I mean, especially when discussing tech in that field and just the entire lifestyle and aspect to that, the Silicon Valleys of the world. Now, Helen, we are getting close to the end of our time together here. Thank you so much for having shared everything, all the insights that you've been able to provide with us so far. It really is, it's a masterclass in kind of, again, just steps to take, things and thoughts, approaches to kind of manage and force yourself to grow. And again, on that topic specifically, do you have any last words, any quick last parting tips that you'd want to share for any real estate agents that may not necessarily be seeing the level of success that they're looking for in the industry?
There's only one way to do it, and that's just pure grit and perseverance. And you can't let anything get you down or stand in your way. You fall down, you dust yourself off, and you move on, and try it again. And it's like on set schedule with so many of, these aggregated leads, I know people get discouraged. And you just can't let yourself do that, because you just have to keep calling, dialing, and smiling, and see where you can insert yourself into the process with any one particular prospect, if in fact they are actually thinking of buying or selling. I mean, I've had my share, and I'm not an expert by any means, but on this, but when I joined about 5 weeks ago, I made it my mission to really understand this platform, really get to know the people, and do everything that I could to, improve myself as an agent in the eyes of Set Schedule. And so that is exactly what I did. And I've plowed through 125 leads. So I'm going to be talking to my success consultant, and big shout out to Sunito and Crystal and Leo and everybody who's helped me out, because I'm not shy about asking questions or asking for help. I'm not going to sit here and try and figure out something, and spend an hour on it when I can call Juan, and Juan's going to help me in 2 minutes. So that's basically what I think is tremendous value, is ask for help. Everybody's there. They've been tremendous to help me out. In fact, I'll email a question thinking, I don't want to bother them, So I'll email a question, and within 5 minutes, somebody's calling me back with the answer. And and I said, oh, that's so nice of you. And they said, no, that's our job. So, yeah, ask for help. Talk to your success consultant a lot. I've been talking to them, they recommend like every month. Well, I probably, part of that time I was once a week talking to Crystal, and just simply persevere. And you're going to get your share of bad phone numbers, bad emails. I picked up one just the other day. It was so obvious. It was gmail.com instead of gmail.com. And I thought, oh, let me call them, because I bet this is a bad number. Yeah, bad number too. I don't worry about researching them. I just archive and move on, because those people don't want to be talked to. So that's fine. That's the prerogative. But I think it's just grit, perseverance, and asking for help.
Definitely, yeah. I mean, with those three things, it really is how you can maximize and accomplish not just real estate success, right, but a success in any industry, right? If you're able to basically, the way that I think about things now currently, right, is if you have the right questions in the era that we live in, and you make it your life's mission to get those questions answered, then you can make progress on really anything that you need to. It's just a matter of whether or not you care enough to actually ask those questions or make it a focus point. Now, Helen, do you have any last parting words for any prospective clients that may be listening or watching that are considering going out to the Seattle metropolitan area? Any things that you'd like to share with them?
Clients in the sense of other agents, or
prospective clients, people that are maybe shopping, looking, thinking about transacting out there in your area.
It's a great area. It's a great area to live. It's a great area to work. Terrific people, very cosmopolitan area. We have, as I mentioned, we've got workers coming in from all the best tech schools around the world. And guess what? The best tech schools are in India. And so, that's, it's a very cosmopolitan. Our restaurants are terrific, very ethnic. Seattle used to be a Norwegian fishing village. We still have the Norwegian community. We still have the fishing boats. We still have the crabbers and all the guys from the Discovery Channel fishing shows here, but we also have everybody else, and it's tremendous fun.
It definitely sounds like it. And I would definitely recommend that any prospective clients, people that are thinking of buying or selling in the Seattle metropolitan area, to reach out to Helen Hitchcock. That does it for today's episode of Set Schedules Meet the Agent. Thank you so much for listening and watching. For our viewers and listeners, don't forget to comment, like, and subscribe for more content like this. And we will catch you on the next episode. Thanks again.